me again. I know. It feels like we just had a conversation, 2-3 days ago? But something came up. Not something really came up. It's just something happened that made me feel like I needed to talk to you. Why? I don't know. Because it was, I almost said it was important, but I always seem to say it was important. No, this is one of those lessons that every writer needs to learn. Now, I should specify that I am talking to indie authors, that wonderful term that everybody loves to bandy about, indie authors. What is an indie author? Well, an indie author is another word, another way to describe someone who either publishes themselves or publishes through a very small press. So, I want your attention, indie authors. And honestly, the truth of the matter is that this kind of applies to every author in existence. Right now, as you know, Muse, I am working to get Dracula Theory out into the world. And I'm this close. This close. So, So after I finished all of the edits, I went back and forth with my editor. I did what I always do, and I did a first proof myself because I didn't want to send it out into the world of other proofreaders not in the best shape it can be. So I proofed it, caught what I could catch, sent it to the first proofreader. First proofreader did their thing, sent it back to me. And based on my past experiences, because if we don't learn from our experiences, we fail the future, I realized that I better proof this again. So I did another pass. And found things that the first proofreader missed. When I got done with it, there was something in the back of my head that said, this is not finished. It's just not. Because only 2 pair of eyes have seen it outside of my editor and my beta readers. And I just didn't trust that. So I sent it out to another pair of eyes for a proof. And that proofreader took a few weeks, sent it back over the weekend with her notes. And to my surprise, there were she had listed out, I think, 4 typos. And then she had made a few other notes because she didn't just, I guess she decided that she didn't want to just read it as a proofreader. She wanted to read it as a reader. And she found a couple things that she had a couple suggestions. Now, some of these suggestions I thought, oh, okay, let's think about that. And the other suggestions were like, based on the fact that you're not a fan of the genre, I'll overlook that. But once again, there was that little something in the back of my head that said, this is not finished. It is not complete. So I decided that since I am publishing this particular book on my own without the help of a small publisher or a medium-sized publisher, that my eyes are going to be the last pair of eyes to view this manuscript before it is sent to publication. So I started proofing it yet again. Now understand, this is my 3rd time on my own to proof this book. 2 other people have proofed it. So this is the 5th proofing of this book, I found a typo. I found one typo so far, which is pretty good. And while I'm proofing it, I'm going to work in some of the small suggestions that the last proofer had for me. Not anything large, just very small, like there was a sentence here or a paragraph here or a clarification there. But the lesson here, and this is a lesson that I wish that I would have learned years ago. The lesson here is that you cannot ever put too much time and effort into the finalization of your manuscript. The easy part is writing the book. That's a piece of cake. It's after, for me, it's after you've written it and after you've gone back and forth with the editor, that is when the difficulty comes. Because the devil is truly in the details here. And there is so much to spot in a manuscript that one pair of eyes cannot possibly catch it. And one round of proofreading is not enough. Now, there is a point in time where you have to say, I have done all I can do. And you can't just keep allowing that little voice in the back of your head to go, ooh, one more time. Because every time you go through this book, you might find something else you want to change. Now, I kind of have a bit of a rule that if I change more than a paragraph, then it has to go back to my editor. Generally speaking, if I've gotten everything back from the editor and the proofers, and there's a paragraph in here that needs changing, I'll change it myself. But here's the kicker: if I have changed more than a sentence, actually, if I have changed more than a word in the final proof, I have to read it out loud to make sure it's correct. And I read it out loud 3, 4, 5 times. I allow myself to second guess after I've rewritten that, because if I don't, I might just bang out another paragraph and say, okay, that's good. And that one paragraph hasn't had multiple passes to make sure that it's correct. So many authors, so many indie authors, and I hate to say this, but I'm going to say it, a vast majority of indie authors rush. I don't know why, but it became the norm for a very long time, and I was guilty of it. That here's kind of how I worked 5 years ago. I'd write the first draft. I'd send it to the editor. We'd go back and forth. The edits were done. I would accept all the track changes and go, it's done, it's ready. Pew, pew, pew. It wasn't ready. It was never ready. Not even close. And part of that, and I'm going to talk about something else in a second, I hope, if I can remember. But part of that was impatience. I was ready to move on to the next project. And back then, we all felt like if we didn't produce as much as we could, we would lose momentum. And if we didn't have momentum on our side, book sales would stop. So we were allowing the quality of our product to suffer in the hopes of making just one more sale. Forgetting and this is important, forgetting the fact that these books would live on for as long as Amazon existed. So people later on would buy these books and read them and go, what's going on? Why are there so many errors in this book? Readers are willing to forgive a certain amount of errors in a book, a small amount of errors. I have read traditionally published books many times and found errors in them. Not a lot, but they exist. But I have also read indie authors, and some of their books are just riddled with spelling mistakes and misplaced punctuation, poor punctuation, all sorts of problems. You can't do that. Now, the thing I wanted to address, and it really has sort of has something to do with it, I suppose, but it's just something that popped into my head while I was blabbering. The first book I published, which was Shiro, was published when Amazon desktop publishing was in beta. So it was a long time ago. And the way and I'm slightly embarrassed to say this, but the way I wrote, well, way back then, I didn't even use an editor. I had the arrogance to think that what I wrote was good enough without help. And I have witnessed over the years a very similar level of arrogance from people, even those that should know better. And yes, I was guilty of it, and it took me a while to have that arrogance knocked out of me, to realize, no, my manuscripts need help. They need an editor's help. Most generally, once I've written a first draft, the story is solid, and very rarely does one of my first draft stories need to be fixed. It's just the grammar, it's just the mechanics of the grammar. And even that has gotten better over the years, somewhat. I still hate commas. But anyway, every writer out there needs to do a couple of things. You need to let go of your ego. It's not doing you any good. Yes, you have to have a certain level of ego to do this. You have to. If you don't have a certain amount of ego, you're not going to feel confident enough to go, I can write a story and put it out there. It's just like being on stage. You have to have a certain level of ego to be able to put yourself on stage in front of an audience. If you don't have that kind of ego, what the hell are you doing in that business? However, there's a fine line between having too much ego and too little ego. Too much ego, and you're either going to be a dick, or you're going to feel like what you produce, that metaphorical shit, doesn't stink. And you're going to feel like you don't need help. You do. You need help. You need an editor. You need a proofreader. You need beta readers. You need all of those things in place. And you need multiple beta readers. You need multiple proofreaders. One editor. Just one editor. I know it's kind of strange, but one editor. So, in the end, the moral of this rather crucial story is that you've got to put in the time and the effort. And a big bulk of that time and effort is on the tail end of it, when you're proofing. And you've got to decide how many times, how many passes are you willing to do? And I'm here to say that it should probably be at least 3 on your own, with another, at least one more proofreader. So at this point in my career, if I'm publishing something on my own, it needs a minimum of 2 proofreaders on top of me proofing it 3 times. I proof it after the edits are done, and I proof it after each proofreader has done their work. Yes, it takes a lot of extra time, but it's worth it. So don't slack on the proofing. Dot every I, cross every T that you possibly can. And don't release your book until you can look that book in the face and go, you're ready. If you have any doubt, any question, any concern as to whether that book is ready, give it one more proof. And you'll know. You'll know that it's ready. But if you have any doubt that it is, it's not. Okay? Now that I have that off my chest, I can continue on. I have more proofing to do. But the good thing is that Dracula Theory will be ready by the end of September. It'll be actually for sale by the end of September. Whee! And then I can go back to that other book that I can never remember the title. Beautiful Complication. Yes! I just remembered the title of that book that I can never remember. Beautiful Complication. I don't know when that's going to be ready. It's going to be a while. Anyway, thank you, Muse. As always, you are awesome.